Good morning. I was on my way to the meeting this morning, and I come in from Palmetto. And as I drove, bridge popped up, and then I could see the shoreline and the beautiful sky and beautiful Bradenton. And I had been reading some things that I thought I would share with you that kind of hit the nail on the head as to what this organization is all about. And I want you to think about this for a minute. It says that good things come to those who believe, better things come to those who are patient, and the best thing come to those who don't give up. This organization don't give up. You keep doing it. And I want you to know that I appreciate it. I'm so happy that I'm a part of what you all do here. We are on our way. We're doing wonderful things. And I thank you for being who you are. And let's see if we can continue. And I want to remind you, Chris was standing up here and she was talking about young people, young children. There's some old children. I'm one of them. You know, so we all need help and need to continue to try to improve. The speaker we have today is someone that I've known for quite a few years. Had an opportunity to work with her at Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. It's really a strange thing when you come in contact with people and you meet eye to eye and you begin to understand that you're speaking the same language and you're thinking the same thing, which is what I have here with many of you. Well, we worked together and she was involved in so many different things. And so I'd just like to give you a few of them. I can't name them all. And I'd like for you to understand that she is where we are. She is committed to children. She is committed to young people. That's one of the things that got my eye when I first working with the psychology club, revising the curriculum so that more kids will have an opportunity to excel and get their degrees. And that got my attention. I just was impressed with that. She is the owner of LifeSmart, which is an organization that deals directly with youth and families. Not only that, but she works with different schools, different religious-based and faith-based type organizations. She works with different universities and colleges, and she serves on many different committees within the Leon County area. And keep in mind, she's a good contact to have because she's up in the Capitol. And we have to work through the Capitol to get a lot of things done. Also, she received a PhD in neurology psychology from Howard University. She's also a professor at Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. She continued to serve on the committees, I mentioned it earlier, and she's also director of the Psychological Research Center at Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. She also serves for the status of men and boys on that committee in Tallahassee, Leon County. And another thing she does, which really is good for me, and we're all involved in it now, she have emceed every program that I've done in Tallahassee for our Thanksgiving drive. So with our Thanksgiving drive that we do here, she and I was the ones that put it all together in Tallahassee. And every year for the last how many years, as long as I've been doing it, up there, and I stayed there 18 years, and she's done it, and she is committed as she is to working with others, and she has an unbelievable energy base that keeps her going, and I would like to welcome Dr. Gwen Singleton.
afternoon. You know, it's so wonderful to be here, in spite of the impending storm that's, coming our direction. But I've heard so many wonderful things about you, but also looking at the history, your very rich history, as well as experiencing the announcements this morning. It makes a difference to hear, those wonderful things that you're doing for children and families in the community. And that is what keeps us going, right? Our children are our future, our families are our future, and the work that we do, if we can help one, but I'm sure from what I've read and what I continue to hear, you're helping more than one, but if we can help just one, then that one helps another and another and another. So it's a ripple effect. So I am definitely honored to be in the presence of you all and to learn about the great work that you're doing. As Mr. Bellamy said, I'm engaged in the community and have been since, I could barely walk because my parents are very engaged as well. So having the opportunity to continue that tradition is a great fortune. So today I'll be talking with you based on some of my work, my experiences, things I've been exposed to, but I'm also a researcher, so some things I pulled in from research. So some of the things I'll talk about with strategies and best practices will come from research. As it says, in my title includes Life Smart, which is the name of one of our companies, my husband and I, but also the name of one of the programs, which I'll talk with you about in a moment. So again, just think that SMART program part or SMART part. And so my focus, empowering underserved populations for success through strategic community engagement. And the reason I wanted to focus on underserved populations is that because things change, trends change, and a lot of times we feel that we have a good idea about community engagement, but a lot of times understanding underserved communities, it's a really game changer to have a great impact. And then also, as I mentioned, talking about strategies. So I'll get started. All right, so our agenda today, I'll be focusing on just very briefly community engagement because you have a very rich history of community engagement already, but just briefly, just to kind of set the tone and introduce us and transition us into talking about adverse conditions that some communities experience, as well as those outcomes to better inform us in our work. Next, breaking the cycle of adverse outcomes. This is important because when we're doing the work, we want to see the benefit. So if we're able to break the cycle of those adverse outcomes, then we can actually see some positive outcomes that we hope to see. The SMART program that I mentioned earlier, and then I'll end with some practical considerations for programs with underserved populations. So that's that strategic part. And of course, any questions that you may have. All right, so moving into our community engagement and adverse outcomes. There we go. All right. All right, so just briefly, so we know, and I kind of highlight things because I said I want them to take this really important part, that community engagement is the backbone, right, of a thriving society. Because when we engage our community, we pour back into, we help uplift, then that helps the community to thrive, right? It helps others to feel valued, to be seen, to be heard, right, to allow us to come together for some common goals and to move things forward, as I'm sure you've experienced, right? And so then my key point, as I've mentioned earlier as part of the title, is that when we're looking at underserved communities, and that's those communities with limited resources. And again, something I mentioned earlier when we were talking about hearing, so a different conversation, but Mac and I, so we were saying, well, if you're not in that position, we don't understand, right? So if we're not in the position of having limited resources, then our perspectives might be limited in it, which is why I felt the need to spend a little time. And again, with my own programs, we're constantly evaluating, reevaluating, and then making adjustments based on what we see the needs are, because the needs will be different from one underserved community to the next. And because of that, we want to avoid having the one-size-fit-all model, right? We'll be talking about some specific strategies later on, but that's because of those adverse conditions that I talked about that could impact the physical as well as mental health of individuals in underserved communities. And I will address some of those. Hopefully you can see that writing. I tried to make it so that you can see it. But some of the adverse conditions that communities experience are poverty, violence and crime in their community, discrimination and systemic oppression, and lack of resources. So starting with poverty. So individuals experiencing poverty, then they struggle providing basic needs, right? Access to health care, access to mental health care, access to really quality educational resources. And so if we think about that, if a child is hungry, well, if you think about the last time you were hungry, so we just take a minute, right? So we can make it really personal. When the last time you were hungry, what happens when we get hungry? We get a little irritable, right? Yeah, we get a little, we can't focus. We can't think straight, right? Everybody and everything's getting on our nerves, right? And then with children in the community, just think about that too. So thinking about them being able to thrive. And if this is their daily reality, then it's really difficult to think about something else. Anybody know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? If those basic needs are not met, you can't reach a higher level. So we have to make sure those needs are satisfied. And I'll just kind of infuse in here in the SMART program, which I'll tell more about in a moment, where we're working with youth in our community. We had one student who talked about, well, yeah, I get tired around third period, or I can't focus, or I can't concentrate. So we just backed up and realized that he was hungry. And talking with the deputy superintendent, she said, well, he's on free and reduced meals. However, he may have been embarrassed. We're not sure what. But we worked with the schools to ensure that he got food, and worked with him with a plan to make sure he went and got food. So those types of things are so critical. And then he started thriving, asking for more math problems. What student, not many students ask for more math problems, right? He's like, may I have more? He was excited that, oh, wow, now I can think, I can process, I can do well, right? So that part, so again, providing basic needs are critical. And then moving to violence and crime. In neighborhoods with violence and crime, one student we worked with, the father was saying, I just got to get them out of here because the gunshots. And fortunately, the youngest child had not seen anyone get shot or injured or stabbed or things like that in their neighborhood, but the child was jumpy and anxious. So then it's difficult to thrive under those conditions as well, right? So if we're thinking about if we're anxious, we ourselves, what do? We pace, we wring our fingers, right? We're jittery. So it's so many things that impact us that when we think about it from our own perspective, it gives us a better understanding about what the youth may be experiencing, and other adults as well, because those families, if the child is hungry, it's very likely that the parents are hungry as well, right? And if the child is irritable because they're hungry, then what? The parent's going to be irritable. So then what? Then it's going to be trickle down. Then the child is also going to be affected, because the parent's not going to be able to be the best parent that they can be to their child because their needs are not met. Right? And then prolonged fear and anxiety can lead to mental health challenges. It can cause risk cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, increased blood pressure. For those sciencey people, it can adjust our set point, so how our body works to try to create a homeostasis or a balance. So then the body then diverts energy to another location to try to handle this threat to create this homeostasis or this balance. So then this can then also cause other health problems. So again, just trying to get this whole picture, right? And then discrimination and systemic oppression. So discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender, age, socioeconomic status, all of those things. Discrimination on any basis, of course, is problematic because it limits the individual access and resources. So if we're trying to help the community to move further, then it's difficult to do that, right? So then, of course, and we'll be talking about, when we talk about some other strategies, we'll talk about policy to address that. And then lack of resources. So again, in underserved communities, a lot of times they have food deserts where there's not a lot of healthy food. And of course, Mr. Bellamy mentioned, I'm a neuropsychologist, so we need fuel for our brain. Right? So we didn't talk about that basic thing when we're hungry. We don't understand why am I hungry? Why am my head hurt? Why am I tired? Why don't I have any energy? Why do I want to just lie down? Because that fuel. And then when we do eat, and we eat healthy things, that the best fuel for our brain, then we're able to be creative, productive, successful, and more balanced. So it's very important that then we're able to assist in that way. Other resources, quality schools, recreation. Of course, we know the importance of education. So if we're going to uplift our community, if there's a problem with the quality of education, they're less likely to thrive. So again, in our program, some of the things that we do, enhance and support, provide academic support, so that those individuals who have been in schools or in circumstances where they have not been able to do well, then we help them to catch up. So the beauty, again, of my expertise is that we know that the things that we've been exposed to influence our brain, and our brain influence, the output. But then even if someone's behind, we can help them catch up by providing them with the appropriate resources, assisting them by giving them strategies, helping them with some basic problem solving and critical thinking skills that can help catch them up. So then one of the things that we are encouraging them and everyone that we work with, and I encourage you to as well, is that there's always hope, that it can get better with the appropriate resources, with the appropriate support, that then, yes, it can get better. Even the student who's struggling academically. One student was like, oh, I'm just not a good student, but we just stick with it. Trust the process. Now has a PhD. So this type of thing, if we encourage them to move on and to dig in, to believe in themselves, to go to the next level, to not just stand there. That I believe in you, and I want you to believe in you. And these types of things are so critical, not just to young people, because if you haven't heard it today, you're brilliant, you're amazing, you're capable, you're enough. But when you hear those things, right, what does it do to us, right? It lifts us up, it strengthens us. So if you don't have anybody to tell you, I have notes in my phone. So if I haven't heard what I need to hear, I've written it to myself already. So I'll go back and read it. Like, okay, this is exactly what I needed. Because we all in this kind of work can get a little weary, right? Because we don't see the outcomes that we expect to see. But then if we say those things, write those messages to ourselves that we know we need to hear to encourage us to keep on going, right? Again, very apropos Mr. Bellamy's poem about not giving up. Not giving up. And I can see what chartered in 1922. I'm going to have to say, yeah, you don't give up. But when we feel like we need that extra, so that extra push just helps to encourage us. Okay. I'll move to, and then I'm looking at the impact of stress. And this is relevant to all of us, but especially young people. If a young person is exposed to chronic stress, then it can disturb sleep. I talked about it can cause stomach aches, it can cause headache. It messes with, for especially older adults, when you talk about blood pressure, if you didn't rest well at night, our blood pressure dips, right? But it can cause what they call non-dipping. So if your blood pressure stays high when you're resting, that time where our body's trying to restore itself, memories are consolidating, all those things are interfered with, but we'll wake up with high blood pressure, which is why a lot of people have heart attacks first thing in the morning, right? So this is important for us as adults as well, but for young people. So then this can impact their ability to cope, their ability to regulate their emotions. So this is why sometimes we see some children in some environments, they cry a lot, they really get upset a lot, they get angry a lot because of the trauma that they've experienced, and they don't know how to appropriately deal with it. It also impacts decision-making and ultimately physical health. And the second bullet talks about adverse childhood experiences. And this is stress, trauma, abuse, neglect before the age of 18. This physician, Folletti, and his team identified this in youth because they saw health conditions that were not typically seen in children. And when he identified these adverse childhood experiences and saw that there was a connection between experiencing these things, these traumas before the age of 18 and health outcomes. So what happens is that it changes the way our body works, which is the last bullet on the page talks about, well, I'm calling it transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, but it's intergenerational transmission. You've heard of the nature-nurture argument. Say, are we this way because of nature? Are we this way because of nurture? So is it biological or is it social? So what the trauma does, it impacts them both ways. So socially, because if parents are exposed to it, then a lot of things that the parents' trauma, their inability to cope or communicate, then it's also passed down. But then genetically, it's also passed down. That word epigenetics, looking at how trauma, stress changes the way the DNA responds or expresses itself. It doesn't change the DNA itself, but it changes the way the DNA expresses itself. So a simple example that may make more sense, if a mother who is pregnant smokes, then her offspring's chances of obesity increases tenfold. And you're thinking like, wow, whether the mother is predisposed to obesity or not, the child is because she smoked, because of epigenetic changes. So then trauma also causes epigenetic changes. And of course, I won't go too deep in that. That's part of my field. I love that kind of talk. And I do want to honor the time and move forward. And so some of the physical and mental health outcomes, anxiety, depression, even in a lot of times, some people experience PTSD from COVID. And we didn't, really realize that. But a lot of youth that we've come in contact with, as well as their parents, had PTSD associated with COVID. And that because of all the trauma, the death, the uncertainty, the change in routine, the children being at home, not, so it's a lot of stress. So then these things impact health. And so in underserved populations who have limited access to mental health services, limited resources, then it means it's just going to get worse for them because it's untreated. And then physical health, heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity. I kind of touched on these things as I was talking earlier, from being exposed to trauma and stress, and if it's untreated. Again, the beauty is that even with the epigenetic changes, those things can be reversed. So it's just good to know that when we are exposed to these things, it causes changes, but then it can also change back. And then because of health disparities in access and things like that, it makes it a little bit difficult to get it treated. So again, just giving that perspective, and I'll do one more perspective, and then I'll just move into the program. And so how stress and trauma impacts success. In education, children can't focus. They can't concentrate for all the reasons we talked about, for either being hungry or being anxious or depressed, not knowing how to focus, all of those things. So then that impairs their ability to complete on time, to graduate. A lot of times they drop out. And then employment because of health, and then limited access to address health. Then it's difficult for individuals to maintain a good job. We've worked with, for instance, juniors and seniors in high school for job training to help them to be successful after high school. We also, prepare them for college, but again, if health is a challenge, it's going to be difficult to maintain a good job. And then, of course, that then continues that problem of the poverty, that cycle, as it says on the bottom. So if the stress and trauma is untreated, they're not provided with the appropriate resources to help them to overcome those challenges, then they're going to remain stressed, they're going to remain marginalized, and then they're going to still not have that access to those resources. So then moving into just breaking the cycle, as well as the SMART program. And just a couple of things, something that we use and we focus on, and you may be familiar with, is trauma-informed care. And that's just understanding the impact of trauma and how it can make an appearance in any aspect of our lives. And so if we're keeping trauma informed, if we're trauma informed in the services that we're provided, then we'll have a different level of patience and knowledge, and I keep saying perspective, with individuals that we deal with, and that this trauma, it focuses on understanding, being sensitive, being responsive, and making sure that we're not re-traumatizing the individuals that we're exposed to. So having it in healthcare, education, community service, as well as the projects or programs that we bring, then will help us to reach individuals that are more difficult to reach. We had one young lady who at an alternative school that we were working with, who the teachers really just had a difficult time reaching. However, because I'd spoken with her on the way in and had a conversation with her when she was having a moment, we just had a conversation, and I gave her her choices, because she, as other young people that I've worked with in the past, I used to do assessments for the courts in DC, and even a 7-year-old had a problem with being told to do something. I'll say, do this as quickly as you can, doing a psychological evaluation. Even a 7-year-old is saying, well, why is it that? He was very frustrated because they feel like they're constantly being told what to do and they don't have power. So if we provide them with choices, this is something that's really helpful. So when I provided her with choices, her choice was to stay. So that's something that's really critical for us when we're working with youth, providing them with the appropriate information and resources, but also letting them know that they have some autonomy. You don't have to. These are your choices. So that's always helpful. Also, it's helpful in terms of breaking the cycle with our community service programs that if we provide social support networks, some people need people to talk to, something we hear, because as psychologists, we ask the youth, what will make your life better? What's something that'll make your life better? And then hearing them a lot of times is social support, having someone to talk to. So having those social networks, as well as for parents, the parents having, on parenting, helping with homework, play dates, things like that. Also access to mental health care. We started working with a group of children who were, I think the youngest was 5, on meditation. And and for us, we were thinking, as a parent, I was saying, oh, how cute. Psychology had left me for that moment, because there's a great deal of value in meditation and mindfulness. Research says it changes the way our brain responds. It lowers our blood pressure, our resting heart rate. It makes us calmer. It makes us more focused. So we were excited that the children could engage in meditation. But as a parent, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is so cute. The 5-year-old with their legs crossed, in a Zen posture, or in any moment, anytime that they would have a difficult moment, we would say, okay, what do you need to do? Oh, I know what I need to do. Excuse me. And again, the cutest thing for a 5-year-old to say, excuse me, but then to go into a quiet space to meditate. Okay, I feel better now. Now I know what I did wrong. So that it's a lot of beauty in things like that, in these tools. And we as adults, too, can help us. For many of you, maybe pray and meditate, but a lot of times we don't think about meditation outside of prayer, right? We can meditate, and meditate can change our minds. It can change our responses. And also policy. I talked about policy before. Mr. Bellamy mentioned that I work with the Council on the Status of Men and Boys. I also have worked with the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. And this body looked at education, mental health, access to jobs, resources, finances. I'm trying to remember all of the committees. But all of those things we engaged in research, but had speakers, but also had listening sessions in the community and made policy recommendations to the city and county to help change, to help impact change. So there are things that we can do at the grassroots level, but then there are also things that we can do if we can get the ear of city or county commissioners to make change. So that's another thing. And you don't have to be a commissioner, as I was. And when I left that body, I still went back to do presentations to the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. And then they use that information each year to make recommendations to the city and county. So you too can go to your city and your county and make policy recommendations to those commissioners whose ear that you may have. So moving into that SMART program that I mentioned, and then the SMART program, even though I have the acronym defined on the next page, I'll say it's an acronym for the program. We work with youth on self-management, motivation, awareness, resilience, and teamwork. So again, calling them SMART, telling them that they're smart. So again, there's power in words. So we're saying you're smart, and having them believe that they're smart, giving them tools to act as if they're smart as well. But this is for currently just high schoolers during their suspension period. We bring them to the university campus, again, giving them a safe place for them to be productive, and work with psychologists, retired teachers. Also, we have graduate students who are interns and undergraduate students who are intern. We have a math person who's coming in as well, PhD in math, a nutritionist and a retired nurse as well, talking about health. So this came out, this collaboration came out of a report from our sheriff, who did an anatomy of a homicide. Those of you in law enforcement may have heard about Sheriff Walkman-Neal's report that showed that children who've been suspended or expelled were on the streets and they were getting into trouble or being victimized. So we worked together, he secured funds, and then I designed this program to then offer this to youth who are suspended, to then get them, and we have some there in the program now in Tallahassee, to work with them while they're suspended, to keep them on track, to give them life skills, to help them with, the things as we talked about, to be able to manage themselves, to be motivated, to set goals, to achieve those goals, to set life plans, to be personally aware, to be socially aware, to work on resilience anytime they have a difficulty, to bounce back, as well as then to be able to work with other people. And as we know, these skills are so important for them to be successful personally, but also to be successful academically, and then later on in life. So this is one of the programs we're very thrilled about. We've worked with so many programs, but this is the one one of the ones that's going on right now, where we've seen such great success with the young people. Many of them don't want to leave, which is why now we're working to secure funds to create an after-school program and weekend school, because we don't want them to get suspended again to come back to the program. Because on a couple of days ago, was that Friday, a young lady she was hugging us. I really don't want to go. Do I have to go? Yes, you have to go. We're gonna do an after school. We're gonna get it so you can come back to us. And I told her, we're gonna come to your school and check on you. So the beautiful thing is that they feel heard, they feel valued, and they feel that they can thrive. So those things are really important for young people, not just young people, for all of us, right? If we feel valued and heard and supported. And so I'll add this piece about the SMART program, because again, we're psychologists, we also do mental health screening with them, and we do psychoeducational or cognitive screenings with them. And we use that information to write a report to the schools, to let them know where they stand, what their challenges may be, what are some of the underlying problems that may have contributed to some of their behavioral issues. Because of course, if we treat the symptoms and not the cause, then it's going to keep coming back, back, right? You're like, I have a headache, but we keep taking aspirins without identifying what caused the headache, then you're going to keep having headaches, and you're going to have to take aspirin. So then we, of course, need to, how am I doing on time? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. And so we would have to make sure that we're addressing those symptoms. So we do life plans and with them, academic plans with them as well. And so I'll just also say is that we have a team. I mentioned all the people that we're working with in the community to assist us in moving forward, to psychologists, the Leon County, the school system, the sheriff's office, psychologists, social workers. We have a number of individuals that are working with us. And the other thing I'll point out, and I'll try to be really quick, it'll be a minute, I see, is that the strategies I was talking about, one was in the community engagement, just involving the community. That part's really important. One project that I worked on, and I won't go into all the details about projects, is that they were involved in the assessment, the asset mapping, as well as participating, so having them participate, as well as using some of their resources that they have in place, making sure that we're allocating resources equitably and not equally, equitably, so based on need. So if we have a homelessness problem, we have a food problem, then we're allocating resources there. Also making sure that we're using the resources that are already in the community, the strengths that are already there. We want to use those people, as well as capacity building, because you want the program to sustain after you leave. And then, of course, cross-sector collaborations. That part is really important. So a whole bunch, so you want a holistic type of program, as well as you want to, I'm going to highlight the fourth one, mutual learning, because a lot of times in the underserved communities, they feel that people come in and study them, which is what they've said to us, but then that no one's really listening. So we're learning about you, but you're also learning about us. So that's really important, as well as transparency and accountability. And another really important thing is making sure we're addressing the root cause. So I'll end where I started, talking about the community engagement being the backbone of a thriving society, right? And that if we, in terms of our efforts and the things that we do, along with the community, along with other organizations and other entities, we can definitely break that cycle of those adverse outcomes that are in our community, and we can uplift the youth and their families in the community so that then they can thrive, and that not only thrive, then they can also go back and give and lift someone else up. So thank you all so much for your time and your attention. And if you scan this QR code on there, you just point your camera on your phone, it'll give you my contact information. So it has my email address there, but it also has my phone number. When you scan it, it'll just save it to your phone. You have the option to save it or not save it, but that makes it easier for you. All right, thank you so much. I'll entertain any questions or comments if I have time.
I think we're short on time for questions today,
Okay,
but thank you so much. That
Thank
was a
you.
wonderful presentation. Don't go anywhere quite yet.
Oh, sure.
It's a Kiwanis tradition to present you with our golden ruler, so you can measure your future success. Thank you so much. That was great. Lots of good information. All right. Join us next week for a new officer induction, and also I believe we have a special presentation from Action Club next week. Meeting adjourned.